I grew up in a night market in southern part of Taiwan. This is my hometown in Kaohsiung, in southern part of Taiwan. My mother is a food vendor. So as I grew up, she would pull the business of a table full of foods and fruits, and I would sit next to her and just writing homework and doing assignments. And I grew up in an environment like this where I soaked in a very bottom pyramid of culture, and yet that become a source of my inspiration in life. I soaked in stories. I soaked in these inspirational tales and all the fabric of life that is happening in everyday life of this night market. And I love stories. This is a teapot that's been passed down for 3 generations in my family. It was passed on from my grandfather to my father and now to me. My grandfather would tell my father, life's secret is in this teapot of Tie Guan Yin. And as I was a kid, I would always listen to my grandfather telling stories and imagining one day I would open up that teapot. And my father would tell me the same thing, life's secret in this teapot of Tie Guan Yin. And again, when he passed on to me, I finally got a chance to open it up, and it was empty. How come they're all lying to me? And I wonder if I continue to pass this teapot to my children, should I be telling them the same thing? Then I realized in your life, you have to believe in something. You almost have to believe in a myth, something that is unbelievable in order to do something impossible. So I still keep this pot of Tie Guan Yin in my house. And I would certainly tell my children, life's secret is in this pot of Tie Guan Yin. I wasn't a very bright child. In Taiwan, since the 4th grade, we will have this IQ test. And my IQ was consistently low. I was constantly tested between 89 to 93. The teacher at that time would announce your IQ to the whole class. And she would announce from the worst IQ. So I was always either the first one to be announced or second. And I did not know about it, that she would announce the score from the backwards. I would always think that I'm the highest IQ. And one day I found out I was actually a very low IQ person. I went home and told my mom. And my mom told me one thing, and that kept stick with me for the rest of my life. Mom said to me, you are not any different from any child. You can go learn anything that interests you. And that becomes sort of my liberation of heavy homework. So I would just stop studying anything that I find boring and just go outside and play, because that's something that interests me. And I wanted to share this with you, that you should always do something that interests you, that will keep you going on for the rest of your life. So I guess for me, ignorance is the biggest bliss. For all the things I've done up till now, that I still feel like I don't know anything. And not knowing things become the biggest strength of me. The reason why I say this is because I feel we live in a society where we have to pretend that we can compete, or we know, or we have a very high performance achievement mentality. But what if we just say that we don't know, and we are afraid, and we can learn and explore, and we make mistakes along the way, and yet we will have rewards at the end. Listening to stories and hearing all the wonderful things that are happening around my life has become a central theme in my life. And as I grow older, I've always wanted to continue discovering stories in life. And I think about today's media, I think about things we read and information we absorb from internet, from Facebook, and I wonder, what kind of planet are we leaving behind? Are we leaving a very well-protected and very good-willed planet and society to our children, or are we perpetuating an ever-destructive society to our children? So I thought of doing something that would combine my interest of discovering stories and keep doing anything fun. And doing this, I hope I could get to preserve all the good stories that I discover. So as I start a business, this is the center question I ask myself. What stories do I look forward to telling my grandchildren? So I became a curator. I began getting involved with TEDx. I got involved with TEDx in 2009. Taipei, along with Tokyo and Shanghai, were three of the first cities that ever started doing TEDx programs. Over the course of 5 years, I've curated over than 250 talks. And these 250 talks become 250 movies. I get to learn 250 lives. And these stories becomes very important in my life. I met friends, and I'll show you one of the events that we did last year. So what have I learned? I learned to be brave. I learned to keep calm under pressure. This is Mr. Lin Huaimin. He's the founder of Cloudgate Dance. When I spent time with him in the backstage, he would sit and meditate 30 seconds before he get on the stage. And I learned the power of silence. Spending time, even though that meaning 30 seconds behind the stage with him, he teach me to be quiet, and then silence is the power. And I learned determination and perseverance. This is Mr. Chen Xihuang. He's 97 years old, and he's a legendary puppeteer master. I learned singular focus and sustain your lifelong interest. And most importantly, I learned teamwork and letting go of control and trust. Putting together an event like this for Vinny and his team wouldn't be possible if without a bunch of volunteers and hardworking people behind it. And yet, I began to ponder as I keep doing this over the 5 years, and I think, do I just do incrementally better next time? Do I just do incrementally improved next time? But I want to do more. I began to ponder what's missing. I began to ponder what more can be done. And I began to ponder, is there anything I could do to go from ideas worth spreading to actions worth doing? And I think about an event like this, it's about colliding, it's about Sharing is about connecting. So since last year, a few of our organizers came together, pulling together 6 or 7 cities in Asia, from Tokyo, Seoul, Taipei, Shanghai, Beijing, Singapore, to start organizing an event. The event is called Pan-Asia. Pan-Asia Network is about bringing people together and to share what's the best in your country. And this year, in November, we're going to Korea. And this is extending the 80 minutes of excitement on stage. And then, as I think more, I think of one of the people that I admire most, Mr. Joey Ito. He's now the director of MIT Media Lab. He's also a venture capitalist and also an internet entrepreneur. This year, he had this 9 principles of the new network world, to go from a container world to be an open-minded and sharing platform. And this is his vision to transform a institution like MIT Media Lab to become more and more open. And these 9 principles are resilience over strength, system over objects, disobedience over compliance, pull over push, compasses over maps, emergence over authority, risk over safety, practice over theory, and learning over education. I think about these 9 things, and I think about how I could put this 9 principle into what I'm doing. Again, I'm looking for that signal that could make me different, could transform what I do. And what's missing today's education? I got a chance to visit a lot of schools, universities, and even kindergartens in Taiwan. I think of 3 things that are missing. One is how to start. Second is how to build a community. And third is how to fail. Especially the third one. Failure is such an ingrained taboo in Chinese society. And I think without failure, we can never innovate. So these are the things I'm thinking about, and I think about creating something that I could address to these 3 issues. So last year in Taipei, a few friends and myself, we took an empty office building and we opened a bar. It's actually a bar for makers. It's a bar for innovators that want to do something. It's a bar for educators and engineers who want to build stuff. And this is a 3D rendering, and this is a co-working space. We put CNC machines and 3D printers in there and invite students and artists, designer, architects to come and spend time together. This is an open-sourced counter design with a collective efforts. All the people come together and build this thing together. So now, every day, we are open to general public to use all the machines. And this is when we open. We pull together all the interesting people in the community, from machine suppliers to designers to architects, to come and then share their ideas. And we would take kids, students, on a tour of streets in Taipei, and we will come and scout all the supplier stores in Taipei, and teaching them and educating them what you're looking for is actually existing around you. And these are all the component stores that you can source your stuff from and build stuff. And then we would hack and build projects and then products like this. We would attach an open source 3D printer to a bicycle and build a mobile fab project. We ride this bicycle on the streets and show people how 3D printing is possible. And we would build an automatic cocktail mixer and take it to a nightclub and have all the girls come to us and wanted to have a drinks. And of course, we always messed up drinks. And then we would teach kids how to build an open source 3D printers. And what we are doing is actually building a place that empowers learning by doing. And then I also think about the world scale. I think about scale in the terms of information and data and the everyday relations with each other. How do we go from huge data and a huge scale of urban development to huge understanding? This is Facebook, and this is in any given minute. If you were to turn off the entire world's lights. And every tweet, every update you tweet on Facebook will lit up the world like this. Can you imagine? Every single of us is contributing to this picture, lighting up the world. But what I'm going to say is, what exactly are we communicating? Are we really saying something, or are we just tweeting and updating our Facebook? TED's founder, Richard Sowerman, created a nonprofit organization called Urban Observatory. He had this project called 1920-21. It says that 19 cities in the world with 20 million people in the 21st century, mega cities, as you know. And these are mega cities in the region, and there are 6 or 7 of them close to where we are. So in these mega cities, I think about every day when we tweet and when we update all the informations on Twitter and Facebook, I think about what exactly are we saying? Are we just adding more data so all this data center can have our own personal information, or are we really saying anything? In 2010, my friend Christian Schmidt and I did an experimental project called Invisible Cities. He is a programmer and design artist from NYU. And I gave him this idea of, what if we crawl some keywords from Twitter and have them combined with Google Earth and do a 3D data visualization. And as you can tell from this animation, this is the data visualization in New York City. And the density of information was shown in different heights. So as you can tell, the higher the region is, that means that there is much things going on over there. This has been published, open source, and now adapted in different cities, in Seattle, New Mexico, and in Bogota. And originally, we just created it because we were interested in this type of stuff. But later on, New York City adapted it to become a fire disaster monitoring system. And Bogota also adapted it to become a disaster monitoring system. So reimagining cities, and this became a focus in my recent work. Imagine cities in resources and assets and all these different things, mobility and capital and understanding, well-being, empathy, compassion, creativity, innovation, youth development, open data, and co-living and co-sharing. And trying to understand cities in the fabric of human life rather than development and concrete. So last year, in order to manifest the concept I have in my mind, I created a project called Shareable Cities. This is for the government, academic, and business world, as well as the students, to come together to imagine how do we mobilize the city's assets and actually maximize the benefit of shared resources in the city. So we think about sharing economy model like Uber or like Airbnb, and then we created a City 10 hackathon. Invite architects, designers, artists, policymakers within 10 hours to create a program that will benefit the city that you live in. And so this is what we created within 10 hours. So we have a bunch of apps that actually now being implemented, which is now being used by the city government. And this is all created within 10 hours. So next year, we are actually rolling that shareable cities to different cities, for example, like Hong Kong, Osaka, and potentially Seattle. But then one thing that changed a lot of what I'm thinking. On July 71st, around 11:30 p.m., there is a huge eruption of propane gas line, underground propane gas line in Kaohsiung, where I came from. It's my hometown. And the eruption is so huge that basically cover 5 kilometers, square kilometers. And as soon as I found out, I tried to call home. But the landline was blocked for at least 30 minutes. And I was really, really worried because I'm afraid that something might happen for my family. And then I begin to think, what if all the work that we've done is just accumulation of incremental change? It's actually putting use to helping the crisis and adding the resilience that the city needs to build. So I begin to rethink everything I do. I begin to think more carefully about, do I just keep doing more things, or I want to focus on doing more long-term focus and long-term thinking stuff. Our shared future, I don't know what it is. As we progress, we're doing so much to harm our society and to harm this place that we live. This is the east coast of Taiwan. It's called Taidong. If you haven't visited, I strongly suggest you take a trip. It's so very close from Hong Kong, and it's very, very beautiful. And I do imagine one day that when we think about our shared future, it wasn't a hundreds of meters or kilometers of underlying oil pipeline we laid in the cities in order to develop economy, but something like this, something that we all could share together. Thank you.